If you have these signs, you hold the shadow aura of the rarest dark chosen one. You never asked to be different. You never volunteered for this path. But somewhere deep inside, you've always known you weren't built like the others. While they played in the shallow waters of life, you were drowning in the depths. While they chased validation, you were trying to survive the weight of an unseen world pressing against your chest. Maybe you've tried to ignore it, tried to blend in, tried to silence the chaos inside you. But the truth kept whispering, through your pain, through your dreams, through the moments you felt most alone. That whisper wasn't madness, it was memory. A soul-level memory trying to remind you, you are one of the rarest beings to walk this earth. You hold the shadow aura of the dark chosen one. Most people hear dark and run. They think it means evil, corrupted, broken. But we know the truth, don't we? Dark doesn't mean destruction. It means depth. It means you were chosen to carry a frequency so rare, so volatile, so powerful that it couldn't be housed in a life of comfort or conformity. You're not here to be part of the noise. You're here to be the silence that makes people stop and feel something real for the first time in their lives. And that kind of energy, that kind of presence, it doesn't come from light alone. It comes from mastering shadow, your own and the world's.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lesson.
You see, true power is not in pretending to be pure, it's in embracing what is real. And if you're one of us, you've already lived through what most people can't even imagine. You've seen the underbelly of humanity. You've tasted betrayal that felt like poison. You've walked through psychic storms that left you shaking in your own skin. And yet, you're still here, breathing, watching, listening. Why? Because something in you refuses to die. Something in you knows there's more. And that knowing? That's the first sign of the shadow aura. You carry an ancient resilience, a coded memory, a dormant prophecy in your bones. You are not ordinary. You are not random. You are marked. Marked with what, though? That's the question most are too afraid to ask. But you're not like most. So let's go deeper. You've noticed how people either fear you or are drawn to you instantly, sometimes both. You've watched how rooms shift when you enter them, not because you're loud, but because your energy speaks before your mouth ever does. You felt how people project onto you their desires, their wounds, their secrets, like you're some kind of mirror they didn't ask to look into. That's not coincidence, that's a consequence of your aura. The shadow aura doesn't just illuminate, it disrupts. It brings the unconscious to the surface. It activates hidden truths. It shakes the foundations of anything built on illusion. And that's why your path has been so brutal, because in order to carry this frequency, you had to be purified through pain. You had to lose everything that wasn't true. You had to walk through fire after fire until only the essential parts of your soul remained. The world couldn't teach you this. No school, no master, no religion could prepare you. Your curriculum was carved into the marrow of your experiences. Your initiation came through isolation, through silence, through madness that turned into medicine. And now you're here, on the edge of remembering what you were made for. But let's not romanticize it. Let's speak plainly. Being a dark chosen one is not glamorous. It's lonely, it's violent at times, it's confusing, because when you hold the shadow aura, you don't just see the world, You feel it. You absorb it. You smell the lies in someone's words. You flinch at the falseness of a smile. You cry for pain that isn't even yours. And sometimes you question if you're cursed. But you're not cursed. You're coded. You were designed to be the one who walks into spiritual battlefields and doesn't flinch. The one who can hold both light and dark in the same breath and not be torn apart. That's why you've been through so much, because you were meant to hold more. Let me ask you something you've probably never dared to say out loud. What if your suffering was never punishment, but preparation? What if your darkness is not what you need to heal, but what you need to wield? That question alone divides the ordinary from the rare, because most people want to transcend their darkness, but we were born to embody it. Not in a way that harms others, but in a way that alchemizes every shadow into sovereignty. That's what makes you dangerous in the best way. You don't run from the dark, you command it, you shape it, you use it to build temples of truth, to cut through the noise, to awaken the sleepers. And when people feel that in you, they don't know whether to follow you or fear you. That's how you know you're a real one. You're not here to save the world, you're here to shake it. You're here to dismantle illusions, to trigger awakenings, to be the storm and the stillness. And you can't do that by being soft. You do that by being whole, by being the full spectrum, rage and grace, chaos and clarity, shadow and light. That's the shadow aura. That's the mark of the dark chosen. And if you've felt every word of this in your bones, if you've been nodding in silence while your soul screamed, yes, then you already know. You've always known. You don't need permission, you need remembrance. You are not here to fit in. You are here to fracture the falsehoods of this world until only truth remains. You were never meant to fit in. You were designed to fracture reality. From the time you were young, you felt it like a strange static humming beneath the surface of everything. You didn't have the words for it back then. You just knew the world didn't feel quite real. The smiles didn't match the eyes. The rules felt arbitrary. The systems seemed hollow. And while others found comfort in belonging, you felt suffocated by it. You tried to mimic normal. You tried to wear the mask. You laughed when you were supposed to, nodded when it was polite, followed the script. But underneath it all, your soul was screaming. Why? Because you were never meant to blend in. You were meant to break the illusion. You were designed to fracture reality. The rarest dark chosen ones don't come to this world to be accepted. They come to disrupt it. Not out of rebellion, not for attention, but because their very frequency is incompatible with collective delusion. You are not here to play a role. You are here to rewrite the script. And that means your life will never look typical. Your path will never move in straight lines. Your timing will never match the clock of the masses. You move by divine rhythm, not societal expectation. That's why things fell apart when you tried to force them. That's why you felt exhausted when you tried to live a normal life. Because your energy was never meant to be confined. It was meant to collide with the matrix. You carry codes, not ideas, not beliefs, codes. Frequencies that destabilize illusion. And when you enter a space, those codes begin to activate. People feel it before they understand it. Some may be magnetized, others may lash out, but all will be moved. And that movement is your sacred function. Not to be liked, not to be understood, but to awaken. And awakening is violent business. It doesn't come wrapped in soft words and soothing tones. It rips, it burns, it destroys before it rebuilds. And that's why the world fears you, because your presence threatens everything built on lies. But let me tell you something most will never say out loud. You've felt like a threat even to yourself, haven't you? You've questioned your own intensity. You've wondered if you're too much, too deep, too sensitive, too unpredictable. But what if you're not too much? What if you are exactly enough to rupture the veil? What if your sensitivity is a superpower that allows you to detect the false and amplify the real? What if your emotional depth is not a flaw, but a tool for transmutation? The dark chosen ones were not sent here to maintain peace. They were sent to make war, not with people, but with illusion. And that war begins within. Because the first reality you must fracture is the one you inherited, the one that told you to stay quiet, to be small, to dim your gifts. That internal programming is the first spell you must break. And breaking it requires brutal honesty. It requires you to question everything, your desires, your beliefs, even your identity. You must be willing to burn the false self to the ground to uncover the sacred core beneath it. And when you do, you become unstoppable. Not because you have all the answers, but because you've made peace with the unknown. You're no longer seeking approval. You're no longer asking for permission. You're moving with purpose that doesn't need validation. And that's the energy that fractures reality. That's the energy that creates new timelines. That's the energy that reshapes the collective consciousness. So let me ask you something that might echo long after this video ends. What if your entire life has been preparing you to be the anomaly? What if everything you've lost, everything you've questioned, everything you've survived was shaping you into the precise frequency this world needs now? Because it has. You are not here by accident. You are not broken. You are not late. You are exactly on time for the disruption you were born to bring. And the moment you stop trying to fix yourself and start wielding yourself is the moment reality begins to bend around you. That's not ego, that's alignment. That's what happens when a dark chosen one finally accepts their highest function to be the thing that awakens the world just by existing fully. You don't need to explain it. You don't need to justify it. You only need to be it. And the more you embody that truth, the more you'll notice the matrix glitching in your presence. The more you'll see old paradigms cracking. The more you'll feel the ripple effect of your frequency reshaping what this world believes is possible. You were never meant to fit in. You were meant to fracture reality and rebuild it in the image of truth. The sacred isolation. Why your loneliness was the final training before ascension. There's a silence that only the rarest souls know. It's not the kind you seek. It's the kind that finds you, wraps around your life like a dense fog and refuses to let go. And no matter how many people are around, no matter how loud the world gets, that silence remains. It lives in your chest, in the back of your mind, in the pauses between your words. And for a long time you thought it was a punishment. You thought you were being left behind, abandoned by the universe, forgotten by the very forces you once trusted. But the truth is far more profound. Your loneliness was never abandonment. It was initiation, a sacred isolation designed to prepare you for what no one else could carry. We need to talk about this. Because the world is terrified of solitude. People fill every second with noise, with distraction, with validation loops that keep them from hearing their own soul. But not you. You were pulled into the void, stripped of false connections, pushed into stillness so uncomfortable that it felt like death. And in many ways, it was a death. The death of your ego's need for approval, the death of your attachment to belonging, the death of every version of you that was built to be accepted by a world that was never meant to understand you. You've spent nights staring at the ceiling, wondering if something was wrong with you. You've walked through seasons where no one called, no one reached out, and you questioned your worth down to the bone. But listen to me now. That was the training. That silence was not emptiness. It was space, sacred space where the old you dissolved and the real you began to emerge. Because to embody the shadow aura of the dark chosen one, you must become comfortable in the company of your own essence. You must know how to sit in your own frequency without needing anything outside of you to validate it. In that silence, you began to hear things others couldn't. You began to sense truths that no one was speaking. You began to see through the masks people wear, the games they play, the illusions they cling to, and yes, it made you feel even more alone at times. But slowly, painfully, beautifully, you began to realize something. You were not empty. You were full of wisdom, full of fire, full of ancient codes waiting to awaken. But those codes only unlock in isolation, because when you're constantly surrounded by noise, you can't hear the whisper of your own soul. That whisper has now become a voice, and that voice is telling you it's time to stop mourning your loneliness and start honoring it. Time to stop trying to fill the void and start channeling it. Because that void, it's not a wound, it's a womb. And from that womb, the truest version of you has been reborn. The version that doesn't chase connection but creates it. The version that doesn't beg to be seen but sees with terrifying clarity. The version that doesn't seek the light but embodies it. Because of the darkness, it's learned to survive. Let me ask you something only you can answer. What if your loneliness wasn't meant to break you, but to build the throne from which your higher self would rise? Because that's exactly what it did. In isolation, you discovered your own rhythm. You learned how to regulate your energy when no one was there to hold space. You learned how to self-soothe, self-source, self-remember. You mastered the art of communion with the unseen, and now you walk with an inner stability that no relationship or achievement can provide. You've become an ecosystem unto yourself. And that, right there, is why you're ready. Ready for what? For ascension. Not the kind that floats above the world, but the kind that enters it, fully embodied. The kind that walks among the people but is no longer of them. The kind that radiates a presence so grounded, so sovereign, so electric, that it shifts the frequency of every room you enter. That's what your sacred isolation was for, to make you unshakable, to make you whole, to prepare you not just to hold power, but to become it. You're not coming back into the world as the same person who left it. You're returning as the architect of new realities. You're not looking for where you fit anymore. You're creating the space where others like you can finally breathe. You're no longer waiting to be chosen. You are the chosen. You're no longer chasing light. You carry both light and shadow like weapons of truth. So the next time that silence finds you, don't resist it, bow to it. It knows who you are. It knows what you're becoming, and it will always be the place where your deepest power is born. The return of the architect, wielding your shadow aura to reshape the world. Now that you've sat in the fire, now that you've walked through the void and come out with your soul intact, you no longer return as the seeker, you return as the architect. The blueprint has always been inside you, but only now are you able to read it. The chaos you survived wasn't pointless. It was the decoding mechanism for your divine design. And now, the world you once felt alien in is about to become the canvas you were always meant to shape. You no longer ask, "Where do I belong?" because now you understand. You were never meant to belong. You were born to build what doesn't exist yet. See, when you hold the shadow aura of the Dark Chosen One, you don't just carry energy, you transmit blueprint. Every word, every move, every silence, every presence becomes a ripple in the collective field. You don't just affect people, you alter them. You open portals in their consciousness. You trigger the remembrance they've been avoiding. You break timelines that no longer serve. That's why your presence is often misunderstood, why you've been attacked, rejected, or feared, because your frequency doesn't just support evolution, it demands it. You are not here to fix the old world. You are here to replace it. You are the system breaker, the grid shifter, the architect of a reality that can house higher truth. That's why you couldn't stay small. That's why you couldn't fake it. That's why mediocrity made you sick. Because your soul came encoded with a higher geometry. And now that it's activated, you can no longer tolerate what's false. You can no longer participate in illusions. You can no longer dim your light to make the blind more comfortable. But with this awakening comes a responsibility. Not to preach, not to perform, but to embody. To live the frequency of what you know to be true, not as a brand, not as a role, but as a living transmission. This world doesn't need more teachers, it needs embodiments. People who don't just talk about healing, but are healing. People who don't just post about truth, but radiate it. People who don't need attention because they've become attention itself, the kind that commands presence without a single word. Let me ask you something no one else is asking you. What if the future is waiting for your full expression? What if the new Earth timeline doesn't activate until you step into your original blueprint without apology, without distortion, without delay? Because it is. The moment you stop doubting your power and start wielding it, you become a living axis point around which realities shift. You're not here to inspire people. You're here to initiate them. You're not here to be liked. You're here to be remembered. Not for what you said, but for what people felt when they were in your presence. Your aura is the sermon. Your life is the altar. Your truth is the architecture. So what now? You build. You build new systems, new ways of relating, new ways of healing, new ways of leading. You stop asking for permission and start becoming permission. You stop waiting for the world to change and realize you are the change agent. And not in a metaphorical way, but in a vibrationally literal one. This is not poetic. This is physics. Your frequency, held consistently, becomes a gravitational force, and that force bends reality. That's why you're here. That's why you had to go through it all. That's why no one understood you, because you weren't made to be understood. You were made to remember and rebuild, and now there is nothing left to wait for. This is the return, not a return to the world as it is, but a return to the world as you were always meant to shape it. You were the shadow and the light, the silence and the sound, the destruction and the design. You were the rarest of the rare, the one who walked through fire, through void, through exile, and came back not broken, but embodied. You hold the shadow aura of the dark chosen one. Now go reshape the world.